Welcome, rare gems. Have you ever noticed that some women seem to understand things they cannot immediately explain? They notice changes in people. They sense when something feels off. They can spend long periods alone without feeling lost, and difficult experiences often leave them wiser rather than simply bitter. But here is where we need to be honest. Having strong intuition does not automatically mean someone has supernatural powers. Sometimes what looks spiritual is also the result of deep observation, emotional awareness, life experience, and a willingness to question what everyone else accepts. That is what makes the Sigma woman interesting. Her strength is not about being mysterious for attention. It comes from the unusual way she processes people, silence, disappointment, and her own inner world. She can recognize patterns, sit with uncomfortable truths, and change when reality proves her wrong. She does not need to pretend she has everything figured out. And if you recognize yourself in some of these signs, do not dismiss your differences as weaknesses. Your sensitivity, depth, independence, and ability to reflect may become powerful qualities when you learn how to use them wisely. Stay with me until the end, because some of these signs are subtle and easily misunderstood. And if any of them resonate with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and join our community. Now let's get started. The rare gems. Number 1. She can feel when something is wrong before she can explain why. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, something about that just did not feel right, even though you could not explain exactly what bothered you? This is one of the more interesting qualities you may notice in a Sigma woman with strong intuition. She can sometimes sense a change in a person before she can put the change into words. It might be a different tone of voice, an unusual pause, a forced smile, a sudden change in texting, or the strange feeling that someone's words and behavior are no longer matching. And here is the important part. She does not automatically assume her feeling is a fact. That is what separates intuition from suspicion. For example, imagine she has a close friend who suddenly starts acting unusually distant. Most people might immediately ask, "What is wrong with you?" or create a story in their head about being betrayed. She may notice the change, but instead of jumping to conclusions, she quietly pays attention. Maybe the friend is hiding something. Maybe they are dealing with a personal problem. Maybe the change has absolutely nothing to do with her. She gives reality time to answer. This can be a powerful form of emotional intelligence because people communicate far more than they realize. Their words might say, "Everything is fine," while their timing, facial expressions, energy, and behavior tell a completely different story. But she also understands something many intuitive people forget. Sometimes your past can influence what you think you are sensing. A previous betrayal can make ordinary distance feel threatening. Anxiety can sound like intuition. Fear can wear the costume of wisdom. So she checks herself too. That is where her deeper strength develops. She does not worship every feeling that enters her mind. She observes it, questions it, and waits for evidence. If her intuition was right, reality eventually confirms it. If she was wrong, she is humble enough to admit it. That balance makes her perception sharper, calmer, and far more trustworthy. Number 2, her spirituality makes her more grounded, not more grandiose. What if becoming more spiritually aware did not make a woman feel more important, but actually made her more humble? That is one of the most overlooked signs of genuine inner growth. A Sigma woman with real spiritual depth does not become obsessed with proving that she is awakened, chosen, gifted, or somehow more evolved than everyone around her. In fact, the deeper she goes, the more she realizes how much she still does not understand. There is something refreshing about a woman who can say, "I might be wrong, She can have a strong intuition and still question it. She can experience something deeply personal and still understand that her experience is not automatically a universal truth. She can believe that life has meaning without pretending she knows exactly what that meaning is. That level of humility is powerful because spiritual language can easily become another form of ego. Someone learns a few impressive words about energy, consciousness, vibrations, or awakening, and suddenly every disagreement becomes proof that everyone else is unaware. That is not necessarily spiritual growth. Sometimes it is simply ego wearing spiritual clothing. A genuinely grounded woman becomes harder to impress with labels. For example, if she believes someone treated her badly, she does not automatically declare that person spiritually toxic or evil. She looks at what actually happened. She considers her own part. She learns the lesson and decides what boundaries make sense. And when she succeeds, she does not need to turn every achievement into proof that the universe selected her for greatness. She understands that being gifted in one area does not make her superior in every area. That is where her wisdom becomes visible. Her spirituality gives her more patience, more self-awareness, and more compassion. It does not make her feel entitled to special treatment. She becomes comfortable saying, "I know what I know, but I also know there is much I do not know." And honestly, that may be one of the clearest signs that her inner growth is real. Number 3, she doesn't need to turn every spiritual experience into a story. Have you ever experienced something deeply personal and felt no urge to explain it to anyone? That can be a surprisingly powerful sign of inner maturity. A Sigma woman with spiritual depth may have moments that leave her thinking for hours. Maybe she has a vivid dream that seems strangely connected to something happening in her life. Maybe she thinks about someone moments before they call. Maybe she experiences a quiet feeling that a particular decision is wrong, even though everything looks fine on the surface. But she does not immediately turn the experience into a public announcement. She understands something many people miss. Not everything meaningful needs an audience. There is a difference between sharing an experience because it genuinely helps someone and sharing it because you want people to see you as mysterious, gifted, or spiritually special. She is careful about that difference. For example, suppose she has a dream about an old friend she has not spoken to in years. The next morning, that friend unexpectedly contacts her. She may find the timing fascinating. She may reflect on what it means to her, but she does not need to convince everyone that the universe just sent her a supernatural message. She can simply appreciate the moment. That restraint protects something important. When you constantly explain your private experiences to other people, their opinions can slowly become part of the experience itself. Someone tells you what your dream supposedly means. Another person gives you a spiritual interpretation. Someone else tells you that you are specially chosen. Before long, you are no longer listening to your own experience. You are listening to everybody else's interpretation of it. She would rather sit with it. This does not mean she hides everything. She may share meaningful experiences with someone she genuinely trusts, but she knows that privacy can be a form of wisdom. Some experiences are meant to change you, not impress anyone. And perhaps that is the beautiful part. She does not need to prove that something profound happened to her. If it truly changed her, the change will eventually appear in how she thinks, chooses, loves, and lives. She lets the experience speak through her life instead of through an announcement. Number 4, she can sit with an unanswered question without becoming desperate. What if one of the strongest signs of spiritual maturity is being comfortable with not knowing? A Sigma woman with deep inner awareness understands that life does not always give immediate answers. Sometimes a relationship ends without a satisfying explanation. Sometimes a career decision remains unclear. Sometimes someone changes toward her and she never discovers exactly why. And instead of forcing an answer simply to make herself feel better, she can sit with the uncertainty. That is harder than it sounds. Most people dislike unanswered questions because uncertainty creates discomfort. The mind wants to close the case, so it starts inventing explanations. They must hate me. Something terrible is going to happen. This happened because I was meant to suffer. Suddenly, a possibility becomes a fact simply because the mind could not tolerate leaving the question open. She tries not to fall into that trap. For example, imagine she sends an important message to someone she cares about and receives no response. Her mind might produce 10 explanations within minutes. Maybe she offended them. Maybe they are angry. Maybe they are deliberately ignoring her. But instead of choosing the explanation that creates the strongest emotional reaction, she reminds herself that she does not have enough information yet. So she waits. That waiting is not weakness, it is discipline. She understands that fear loves empty spaces because fear can fill them with almost anything. Real wisdom sometimes means refusing to decorate uncertainty with imaginary facts. This also makes her intuition more reliable. When she feels that something is wrong, she can observe the feeling without immediately obeying it. She gives circumstances time to provide evidence. If the feeling was accurate, more information will usually appear. If it was anxiety, the feeling may fade when the situation becomes clearer. She does not need to force life to reveal everything on her schedule. Some answers arrive through time, others arrive through experience. A few never arrive at all. And she learns that peace does not always come from knowing what will happen next. Sometimes peace comes from knowing that whatever happens, she will face it when the answer finally arrives. Number 5. She notices what people become around power. What really happens to a person when they finally get what they have always wanted? This is something a deeply observant Sigma woman pays attention to. She understands that people can say almost anything about their character when life is easy. Someone can describe themselves as humble, loyal, generous, or respectful. But give that same person money, authority, beauty, influence, or social status, and suddenly you may see parts of them that were previously hidden. She watches those changes. For her, spiritual discernment is not about pretending she can read someone's mind. It is about watching patterns. How does a person treat a waiter when nobody important is watching? How do they speak to someone who cannot help their career? What happens when they are given control over a situation? Do they become kinder, or do they become careless with other people's dignity? These small moments can reveal more than 100 impressive conversations. Consider someone who is incredibly polite when they need something from you, but becomes dismissive once they get what they wanted. That change tells her something. Or consider a person who receives a promotion and suddenly starts humiliating colleagues because they finally have authority. The position did not necessarily create that character. It may simply have removed the limits that were keeping it hidden. This is why she pays attention to how people behave when there is nothing to gain. Power is a strange mirror. It can magnify generosity, but it can also magnify entitlement. Money can reveal generosity or greed. Attention can reveal confidence or addiction to admiration. Influence can reveal responsibility or the desire to control everyone nearby. And she does not make these observations so she can feel superior. She makes them because choosing the wrong people can cost you years of your life. Her wisdom is knowing that someone's character is not fully revealed by how they treat people above them. Watch how they treat people they believe they can safely disrespect. That is where the mask often slips. And once she learns to notice that, she becomes much harder to deceive with charming words, impressive titles, or carefully managed appearances. Number 6. She doesn't confuse intensity with destiny. Have you ever felt something so intense that you immediately assumed it must have a deeper meaning? A deeply intuitive Sigma woman learns to be careful with that feeling. She understands that intensity can be powerful without being meaningful. A strong attraction does not automatically mean someone is destined to be in her life. A painful relationship does not automatically mean the universe sent that person to teach her a lesson. Sometimes a powerful connection is simply a powerful connection. That distinction can save her from making some very expensive emotional mistakes. Think about meeting someone who seems strangely familiar. The conversations flow effortlessly. The chemistry is strong. Every coincidence feels significant. Maybe they contact her just when she was thinking about them. It can feel almost impossible to believe that all of this means nothing. But she pauses. Instead of immediately saying, "This must be destiny," she asks a more grounded question. What is this person actually showing me through their behavior? Because chemistry cannot replace character. Someone can make her heart race and still be unreliable. Someone can understand her deepest thoughts and still be incapable of treating her well. Someone can create an unforgettable emotional experience and still be completely wrong for her life. This is where her spiritual discernment becomes different. She leaves room for mystery without surrendering her judgment. She can believe that certain experiences carry meaning while accepting that she may not understand that meaning immediately. Perhaps that painful relationship taught her something, but perhaps the lesson was not that she was destined to suffer with that person. Perhaps the lesson was learning what she would never tolerate again. Perhaps that strange coincidence was meaningful. Or perhaps it was simply a coincidence that happened at an emotionally important moment. She does not need to decide immediately. This balance between faith and skepticism protects her from turning every emotion into a prophecy. She can appreciate the mystery while keeping both feet on the ground. Because real spiritual wisdom does not make her less rational. It makes her more careful about the stories she tells herself. And sometimes the most powerful question she can ask is simply, is this truly a sign, or is this something I desperately want to be a sign? Number 7. She can detect emotional hunger, disguised as love. Have you ever wondered whether someone truly loves you, or whether they simply cannot cope without you? This is one of the hardest lessons a deeply perceptive Sigma woman can learn, because emotional hunger can look remarkably similar to love in the beginning. Someone constantly wants her attention. They message all day. They become upset when she needs space. They tell her that nobody understands them like she does. At first, all of this can feel flattering, intense, even romantic, but she eventually notices something important. Being desperately needed is not the same as being genuinely valued. A person can depend on her for comfort, reassurance, entertainment, emotional stability, or a sense of identity without actually being interested in who she is. They may love what she does for their emotional life more than they love the woman standing in front of them. For example, imagine a partner who becomes extremely affectionate whenever they are lonely, stressed, or insecure. They want her immediately when life becomes difficult. But when she has a problem, suddenly they are unavailable. When she talks about her dreams, they lose interest. When she needs emotional support, the conversation somehow returns to their problems. That pattern eventually becomes difficult for her to ignore. She begins asking a much deeper question. Do you love me? Or do you love how I make you feel? That question can completely change the way she chooses relationships. Healthy love does not require her to become someone's therapist, emotional emergency service, personal cheerleader, or permanent source of reassurance. Two people can support each other without one person becoming responsible for keeping the other emotionally stable. She also learns to examine herself. Sometimes being needed can feel wonderful because it creates a strong sense of importance. But if she stays only because someone cannot function without her, she may eventually discover that she was feeding her own need to feel indispensable. Real love leaves room for two whole people. It says, I want you in my life, not I cannot survive without you. And once she understands that difference, she becomes much more careful about confusing emotional dependency with genuine connection. She stops asking only, how strongly does this person feel about me? She starts asking, how well does this person actually love me? Number 8, she experiences certain periods of solitude as psychological reconstruction. Have you ever reached a point where you did not want to be around anyone, not because you hated people, but because you needed to hear yourself think again? For a deeply reflective Sigma woman, solitude can sometimes become more than simply taking a break from social life. It can become a period of psychological reconstruction. There are moments when the person she has been for years no longer feels completely honest. Her goals may still look good on paper, certain friendships may still exist, and the routines she built may still function, yet something inside her knows that she has changed. So she steps back. From the outside, people might misunderstand it. Someone may think she is being distant, difficult, antisocial, or suddenly uninterested in everyone. But internally, something much more serious may be happening. She is reviewing her life. She may start asking uncomfortable questions. Do I actually want this career? Or did I choose it because everyone expected it? Do I genuinely enjoy this friendship? Or am I maintaining it because we have history? Do I still believe this, or have I simply repeated it for years? Who am I when I am not performing the role everyone knows me for? Those questions can completely rearrange a person's life. Imagine a woman who spent years being the dependable one. Everyone calls her when they need advice. She solves problems, keeps promises, and carries responsibilities without complaining. Then one day she realizes she has built an identity around being useful. She retreats for a while, not because she suddenly stopped caring, but because she needs to discover who she is when nobody needs anything from her. That period can feel confusing. She may change her routines, reduce unnecessary conversations, rethink old beliefs, or simply spend more time alone. Some people may not understand the change, and she may not have the energy to explain it. But solitude, when used wisely, can expose things constant noise keeps hidden. She is not necessarily disappearing. She may be rebuilding her relationship with herself. And when she eventually returns, she may not be the exact woman people remember. Not because she became colder, but because she finally became more honest about who she is and what she wants her life to mean. Number 9. She can outgrow a version of herself without hating who she used to be. Have you ever looked back at an older version of yourself and wondered, how could I have accepted that life? A deeply mature Sigma woman can ask that question without turning it into self-hatred. She understands that growth does not require insulting the woman she used to be. There may have been a time when she tolerated things she would never tolerate today. Maybe she stayed in a relationship too long. Maybe she trusted the wrong people. Maybe she was afraid to speak up. Maybe she chose a career because it pleased her family instead of because it fulfilled her. Looking back, she may see those decisions clearly now. But she also understands something important. She did not have today's awareness back then. The woman she was 5 years ago had different information, different fears, different responsibilities, and perhaps a completely different understanding of herself. Judging that woman with everything she has learned since then is not always fair. For example, imagine a woman who spent years saying yes whenever people needed her. Today she understands that constantly rescuing everyone left her exhausted and quietly resentful. She could look back and call her former self weak. Instead she asks, what was I trying to earn by being needed? That question teaches her more than shame ever could. This is where real growth becomes powerful. She doesn't throw away her past. She studies it. She takes the lessons, keeps the wisdom, understands the mistakes, and leaves behind what no longer belongs to her. She can even feel compassion for the woman who once made those choices. That does not mean she excuses everything. It means she understands herself well enough to learn without constantly attacking herself. Her old self becomes evidence of how far she has traveled, not proof that she was worthless. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful forms of spiritual maturity. You do not have to hate who you were to become someone better. Sometimes the strongest way to honor your past is to understand it, forgive yourself for what you did not know, and then have the courage to live differently. Number 10. Her greatest spiritual power is that she no longer needs to feel powerful. What if the deepest form of spiritual strength is reaching a point where you no longer need to feel special? This may be one of the hardest signs to recognize, because genuine inner strength does not always look impressive. A deeply grounded Sigma woman may stop being interested in proving that she is intuitive, awakened, chosen, different, or somehow more spiritually advanced than everyone else. She simply becomes more honest with herself. She can say, "I do not know." She can change her mind when new information proves her wrong. She can apologize without feeling that an apology makes her smaller. She can admit that she misunderstood someone's intentions. She can walk away from something that once mattered deeply to her, and she can stay when leaving would simply be an emotional reaction. That flexibility is powerful. Think about someone who builds her entire identity around being the woman who can always read people correctly. Eventually, she misjudges someone. She has two choices. She can invent excuses to protect her image, or she can admit, "I got that wrong." The second choice requires far more strength, because once she is no longer addicted to being right, nobody can easily manipulate her through her ego. This is where spiritual maturity becomes surprisingly practical. She does not need every coincidence to prove that the universe is sending her messages. She does not need every difficult person to be labeled spiritually toxic. She does not need every success to confirm that she is chosen. She can simply live. Her life does not have to become a constant advertisement for how extraordinary she is, and there is freedom in that. She can be intelligent without needing everyone to recognize it. She can be intuitive while accepting that intuition can sometimes be wrong. She can be deeply spiritual without turning spirituality into a competition. Eventually, she realizes something profound. The moment you stop needing to feel powerful, you become much harder to control. Praise cannot easily trap you. Criticism cannot easily destroy you. Labels cannot easily define you. You are free to learn, change, apologize, begin again, and become someone new. That may be the rarest power of all, not needing to prove that you possess it. In final words, what if your greatest strength is not something extraordinary happening around you, but something quietly changing inside you? After everything we have explored, the deeper meaning of a Sigma woman with rare spiritual power is not that she can predict the future or understand every mystery. It is the way she learns to understand herself. She watches carefully. She questions her own assumptions. She can sit with uncertainty, recognize emotional patterns, walk away from what damages her, and still remain open to learning. That is what makes her different. She does not need to turn every strange experience into a spiritual sign. She does not need to believe she is better than anyone else. Her strength grows when she becomes honest enough to admit what she does not know and wise enough to learn from what life keeps showing her. If you recognize yourself in these qualities, remember this: being different is not a problem you need to fix. Your depth can become wisdom when you pair it with humility. Your intuition becomes stronger when you test it against reality. Your solitude becomes valuable when you use it to understand yourself rather than simply escape the world. You may be a Sigma woman not because you fit some perfect label, but because you have learned to build a life from the inside out. Keep growing, keep questioning, keep becoming. And if any of these signs connected with your own experience, share your thoughts in the comments. I would genuinely love to hear your perspective. Subscribe and join our community for more conversations like this. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.